Everyone thinks they know the story of the betrayed wife who discovered her husband's affair with her best friend. But what if I told you that this woman knew everything for months? What if she planned every move, every word, every reaction? What happens when the victim becomes the predator and the hunter becomes the prey? This story will destroy everything you believe about betrayal and revenge. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to discover that your entire life was a lie? Megan thought she knew Tyler better than anyone in the world. 15 years of marriage, a beautiful house, a thriving business that she built from scratch. She believed she had everything. But sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who keep the darkest secrets. Tyler had always been charming, the kind of man who could win over any room just by walking into it. Megan fell in love with that charm from their very first meeting. Nicole, her best friend since college, always said that Megan was lucky to have found a man like him. What irony of fate! For months, Megan noticed small changes. Tyler would come home late, always with perfect excuses. Nicole would cancel plans at the last minute, claiming work or personal problems. There were strange looks between them when they were together. Small signs that a woman in love prefers to ignore. But Megan wasn't just a loving wife. She was a smart businesswoman, used to reading people and situations. And when she started paying real attention, she realized something was terribly wrong. What happens when a woman discovers she's been betrayed by the two people she trusted most? What happens when she decides she's not going to be the victim of the story anymore? Megan was about to prove that underestimating a determined woman is the biggest mistake anyone can make. This is the story of how a wedding anniversary turned into the most elaborate revenge you've ever heard. Now tell me, what city and country are you watching us from? Drop it in the comments below. I love knowing where our audience comes from. Megan woke up that Friday morning with a smile on her face. Today was May 15th, exactly 15 years since she said yes to Tyler in a small church surrounded by white flowers. 15 years. How quickly time had passed. She got out of bed slowly, trying not to wake Tyler, who was sleeping deeply beside her. She went down to the kitchen and started making coffee, as she did every morning. But today was different. Today she was going to organize the most perfect wedding anniversary party that had ever existed. Megan had always been detail-oriented. That's how she built her marketing consulting business from scratch. Every project was planned down to the smallest detail. Every client received total attention. And today, she was going to apply that same dedication to the party that would celebrate their marriage. The guest list had been ready for weeks. 20 special people, Tyler's parents, his younger sister, some close friends of the couple, and of course, Nicole. Her best friend since college days, the person who was by her side when she met Tyler, the same one who helped choose the wedding dress 15 years ago. Megan picked up the phone and called the couple's favorite restaurant. She confirmed the reservation for 7 o'clock. Large table, garden view, special decoration with red roses. Tyler always said that red roses reminded him of the first bouquet he gave her on their second date. Then she called the florist. The flowers were ready. They would be delivered to the restaurant at 5 in the afternoon. 25 small arrangements, one for each guest to take home as a keepsake. Megan wanted everyone to remember that night forever. The dress was hanging in the closet, an elegant navy blue model that she bought especially for the occasion. Tyler always said she looked beautiful in blue. The jewelry was also set aside, the pearl necklace he gave her on their 10th anniversary, and the diamond earrings that were a gift for their 5th wedding anniversary. Around 10 in the morning, Tyler came down to the kitchen. He was in pajamas, with that lazy smile she had always found charming. "Good morning, love of my life," he said, kissing her forehead. "You woke up early today." "It's our anniversary," Megan replied, radiant. "I couldn't sleep properly because I was so excited." Tyler poured coffee for himself and sat at the kitchen counter. "You organized something, didn't you? I know that look of yours when you're planning something special." Megan gave a discreet smile. "Maybe you'll find out tonight." During the afternoon, she went out to get the cake. 3 layers of chocolate with strawberry, exactly like their wedding cake, only smaller. The baker had paid attention to details. Small sugar flowers decorated the entire surface, and on top there was a golden plaque that read, 15 years of love. On the way back home, Megan stopped at the beauty salon. She did her nails, touched up her hair color, and got a blowout. She wanted to look presentable for the night. At 5 in the afternoon, her cell phone rang. It was Nicole. "Hi, Megan. Just confirming tonight's time. 7 o'clock at the restaurant," Megan replied directly. "Right. See you there then." The call was brief and a little strange. Nicole seemed different, more distant, but Megan didn't want to think too much about it. She took a relaxing bath, put on her favorite perfume, put on the blue dress and jewelry. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she felt like a queen. Tyler would be enchanted. At 6:30, Tyler appeared in the living room wearing the gray suit. He was well dressed, ready for the night. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," she replied simply. In the car, on the way to the restaurant, Megan looked out the window. 15 years of marriage, a night she had carefully planned, all friends and family gathered together. She knew exactly what Tyler and Nicole had been doing behind her back for months. She knew about the meetings, the lies, everything. What she didn't expect was that Tyler would choose precisely that night, in front of everyone, to make his big announcement. But maybe it was better that way. After all, Megan also had some surprises saved for him. Before we finish this chapter, I want to know something. Have you ever been in a situation where you discovered that someone very close to you was betraying you? How did you react? Tell us in the comments, because stories like these connect us in a very special way. And if you're enjoying this story, leave your like on this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell. Because this journey is just beginning, and you won't want to miss any detail of what's coming next. While Tyler drove toward the restaurant, Megan adjusted the strap of her purse on her shoulder. Inside it, carefully organized in a discreet folder, were all the documents she had been collecting over the past 6 months. Bank statements, photos, recordings, transfer receipts. Everything was there, waiting for the right moment. She touched the purse lightly and sighed. How had they gotten to this point? 6 months ago, Megan still believed she had a solid marriage. Sure, Tyler had been acting different, but she always found explanations. Work was stressful, he said. His company was going through changes. He needed to work more overtime, travel more. Megan remembered the first time she suspected something. It was a Thursday in November. Tyler came home at 10 at night, saying he had a meeting that ran late. She was making tea in the kitchen when she smelled a different perfume on him, a feminine perfume that she knew very well. "Were you with Nicole today?" she asked casually. Tyler seemed surprised for a second, but quickly recovered. "Oh, yes, she stopped by the office to talk about a project. You know how she is, always helpful." Megan smiled and nodded, but something in her stomach tightened. Nicole had never been to Tyler's office before, and why hadn't he mentioned this before? 2 weeks later, it was Nicole's turn to cancel the Saturday lunch they had every week for years. "Sorry, Megan. Something came up last minute," Nicole said in a text message. That same Saturday, Tyler said he was going to play golf with friends. But when Megan called her sister in the afternoon, she mentioned that she saw Tyler at the mall with a brunette woman. Nicole was brunette. During December, the signs multiplied. Tyler started locking his phone with a password. Nicole began avoiding gatherings where Tyler would be present. When they were together, there was a strange tension in the air, looks that lasted longer than normal, conversations that stopped abruptly when Megan approached. But Megan was in love, and people in love have an impressive ability to ignore the obvious. "Maybe I'm imagining things," she would tell herself. "Tyler loves me. Nicole is my best friend. They would never do this to me." Love has this cruel characteristic. It blinds us to reality when the truth is too painful to accept. In January, Tyler started coming home even later, always with perfect excuses, always with logical explanations. Megan wanted to believe desperately. That's when she noticed something strange in the company's finances. Small transfers that she didn't authorize, amounts leaving the corporate account without explanation. Tyler had access to the accounts as a minority partner, but he never touched the money without talking to her first. When she asked, he said they were operational expenses he forgot to mention. Digital marketing investments, payments to external consultants. "You don't need to worry about every penny, Megan," he said, kissing her forehead. "Trust me." And she trusted because she still loved him. In February, Nicole started wearing new, expensive clothes, jewelry that Megan had never seen. When she asked about the new diamond earrings, Nicole laughed and said they were a gift from a secret admirer. "Lucky you," Megan replied, forcing a smile. In March, the situation became unbearable. Tyler was more distant than ever. Nicole practically disappeared from her life, always with excuses not to meet, and the financial irregularities were getting bigger. That's when Megan made the most difficult decision of her life, hiring a private detective. "I need to know the truth," she said to herself, dialing the number she found on the internet. For 3 weeks, the detective followed Tyler and Nicole. The photos he brought confirmed what Megan already knew deep in her heart, but refused to accept: romantic lunches, hotel meetings, passionate kisses in the office parking lot. But the photos were just the beginning. The detective also discovered something much worse. Tyler wasn't just betraying Megan emotionally. He was systematically embezzling money from her company, transferring amounts to personal accounts, financing his relationship with Nicole. When Megan saw all the documents, all the evidence, she cried for 3 straight days, not just for her broken heart, but for the double betrayal. The man she had loved for 15 years was destroying her life in every possible way. But after the tears, something different came. A coldness, a determination she didn't know she possessed. Megan stored all the documents in the folder she now carried in her purse. She spent the last 2 months carefully planning every move. She protected her assets, organized the evidence, consulted lawyers. And during all this time, she continued pretending she didn't know anything. She continued being the loving wife, the trusting friend. Because deep down, a part of her still loved Tyler and wasn't ready to confront reality. In recent months, Megan had started carrying the documents with her everywhere. It was as if that folder was a shield, protection against the reality she wasn't yet ready to face. Having the evidence close to her made her feel safer, more in control, even though she didn't know when or how she would use that evidence. As the car approached the restaurant, Megan took a deep breath. The folder in her purse felt as heavy as if it were made of lead. Inside, it was the end of her marriage, the destruction of her best friendship, but also her liberation. She still loved Tyler. That was the worst part of it all. Even knowing everything, even carrying the evidence of his betrayal, a part of her heart still belonged to the man she met 15 years ago. But love and self-respect are 2 very different things. And Megan was about to discover that sometimes life forces us to make choices we never imagined we would have to make. The restaurant was perfect. The tables were arranged exactly as Megan had requested. The flowers decorated the environment with elegance, and the soft lighting created a welcoming atmosphere. The guests began arriving promptly at 7 o'clock. Tyler's parents arrived first, followed by his sister, Rebecca. Then came the couple's friends, Mark and Linda, who had been neighbors for 10 years, James and his wife Carol, Megan's work colleagues. Each person who entered greeted the couple with smiles and warm hugs. Nicole arrived at 7:15, wearing an elegant black dress and a necklace that Megan had never seen before. She greeted Megan with a kiss on the cheek and Tyler with a formal handshake, but Megan noticed that their eyes met for a few seconds longer than normal. "You look beautiful tonight," Nicole said to Megan, forcing a smile. "Thank you," Megan replied simply, discreetly touching the strap of her purse where the documents were. When everyone was seated, Tyler stood up and lightly tapped his glass with a spoon, getting everyone's attention. "Everyone, thank you for being here tonight. 15 years is an important milestone, and we wanted to share this moment with the most special people in our lives." Everyone smiled, and some raised their glasses. Megan watched Tyler speak, noticing something different in his posture. He seemed nervous, but determined. Megan organized this wonderful evening, as she always does with everything in her life. She's an incredible woman, a successful businesswoman, a person anyone would be lucky to know. Megan frowned slightly. There was something strange in Tyler's tone. He was talking about her as if she were a distant person, not his wife. But sometimes in life, Tyler continued, and his voice became more serious, people change. Paths separate. And it's important to have the courage to admit when something has come to an end. The atmosphere became tense. The guests began exchanging confused looks. Tyler's mother put her fork on her plate, paying full attention to her son. Megan felt her heart race. Not because she was surprised by what was coming, but because Tyler was really going to do that there, in front of everyone. What I'm trying to say is that Tyler took a deep breath and looked directly at Megan. I want a divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just quiet. It was a total vacuum of sound, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Forks stopped in midair, glasses were suspended halfway to lips, and all eyes turned to Megan. Rebecca opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tyler's mother brought her hand to her chest, clearly shocked. Mark and Linda looked at each other, not knowing where to look. James whispered something to Carol, who shook her head in disbelief. Nicole kept her eyes fixed on her plate, as if trying to become invisible. Megan felt all eyes on her. It was like being in the center of a stage, with spotlights pointed in her direction, waiting for her reaction. She could hear her own heart beating in her ears. For a moment, she considered actually playing the role of the devastated wife. It would be easy. Cry, scream, make a scene. That's what everyone expected. That's what any normal person would do in this situation. But then she remembered the folder in her purse, the photos, the bank statements, all the lies, and something inside her hardened. Instead of crying, Megan took a deep breath and looked around the table. All those dear people who came to celebrate their love, now witnessing the public humiliation that Tyler chose to cause. Tyler, she said calmly, surprising everyone with the tranquility of her voice. Ma, are you sure you want to do this here? Now? In front of everyone? Tyler seemed momentarily disconcerted by her calmness. He probably expected tears, pleas, drama. Yes, Megan. I think it's time to be honest. With everyone and with ourselves. Honest. The word echoed in Megan's mind like a cruel joke. Tyler talking about honesty after months of lying, cheating, stealing. All right, she said, and her voice remained surprisingly firm. If that's what you want. Silence returned to dominate the table. Tyler's parents seemed lost, not knowing what to say or do. The friends avoided looking directly at the couple, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. That's when Tyler's mother finally found her voice. Tyler, dear, what's happening? You seemed so happy. Mom, sometimes appearances are deceiving, Tyler replied, casting a quick glance at Nicole before returning his eyes to Megan. In that moment, Megan completely understood what was happening. Tyler wasn't just asking for a divorce. He was doing it publicly, in front of friends and family, to humiliate her, to leave her as the poor thing abandoned on their wedding anniversary. She touched the strap of her purse again. The documents were there, waiting, but it wasn't time yet. Tyler obviously had more to say, and Megan wanted to hear everything before playing her cards on the table. Because if Tyler wanted to turn that night into a public spectacle, Megan was going to give him exactly that. Only the ending would be very different from what he imagined. And you? Have you ever been in a situation where someone humiliated you publicly? How did you react? Sometimes life puts us in situations that test our inner strength in ways we never imagined. Tell us in the comments how you would handle a situation like this. The silence at the table was becoming unbearable. Tyler looked around, seeing the shocked faces of friends and family. He took a deep breath, as if he were preparing to deliver the final blow. I know this is hard to hear, he continued, but you all deserve to know the complete truth. Tyler's mother held her husband's hand, as if preparing for something even worse. Rebecca looked at her brother with an expression of total disbelief. Tyler's father, who had always been a man of few words, nervously fidgeted with his napkin, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. The truth is that, Tyler paused and looked directly at Nicole. I fell in love with someone else. Nicole raised her eyes from her plate for the first time since Tyler started speaking. Their eyes met for a moment, and Megan saw a silent exchange between them. It was like watching a secret conversation happening right in front of her. Nicole seemed nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she held her wine glass. Who? Rebecca asked with a trembling voice, although Megan could see that her sister-in-law already suspected the answer. Tyler hesitated for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Megan watched every micro-expression on his face, every eye movement. She had known Tyler for 15 years and could see that he was struggling internally, perhaps questioning whether he should really continue with this public humiliation. Then he looked at Nicole again, as if seeking encouragement. Nicole. If the previous silence was deafening, this one was apocalyptic. It was as if a bomb had exploded in the middle of the table, leaving everyone temporarily deaf and mute. Mark dropped his fork on his plate, making a noise that echoed through the room. Linda brought her hands to her mouth, muffling a scream. James turned his head to look at Nicole with an expression of total shock, as if he were seeing a completely different person from the one he had known for years. Carol, James's wife, began shaking her head slowly, as if trying to deny what she had just heard. Mark whispered something to Linda that Megan couldn't hear, but from her expression, they weren't kind words. Tyler's parents seemed paralyzed. His mother looked alternately at her son, at Nicole, and at Megan, as if she couldn't process what she was hearing. His father had completely dropped his napkin and now had his hands clenched in fists on the table. Megan felt as if she were watching everything from outside her own body. She knew this was going to happen, had the evidence in her purse, but seeing Tyler confess publicly was still surreal. It was like watching a bad movie where you already know the ending, but you're still shocked when the scenes unfold. Tyler, what are you saying? His mother managed to murmur, her voice broken with emotion. I'm saying that I fell in love with Nicole 3 years ago, Tyler replied, his voice gaining a firmness it didn't have before. And that I can no longer pretend I'm happy in this marriage. The word pretend echoed in Megan's mind. 3 years of pretending. 3 years of fake kisses and false nights, of empty I love yous, of anniversaries celebrated with lies. The irony was almost comical. All eyes turned to Nicole, who was red to the roots of her hair. She looked at her own hands, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Megan noticed that Nicole was trembling slightly, and for a moment she almost felt sorry for her former best friend. Nicole, Carol said with a cutting voice, is this true? Nicole slowly raised her eyes. First she looked at Megan, and for a second Megan saw something that could be remorse, maybe even shame. But then Nicole looked at Tyler, and her expression changed. It was as if she had found courage in his presence. Yes, she said quietly, but firmly enough for everyone to hear. It's true. The impact of those 2 words was devastating. Rebecca stood up from the table abruptly, knocking over her chair in the process. The sound of wood hitting the floor made several guests startle. Mark shook his head in disbelief, murmuring words that sounded like curses. Linda whispered, "My God," to herself, repeatedly, like a prayer. Tyler's mother began crying softly, silent tears streaming down her face. His father remained motionless, but Megan could see the tension in his neck muscles. "How could you do this?" James asked, his voice full of contained anger. "Megan has been our friend for years. She was at our wedding, at our children's baptisms." "These things happen," Nicole replied, finally finding her voice. "And nobody planned for it to be this way." "Nobody planned," Linda repeated, incredulous. "You had an affair for 3 years, and nobody planned it?" Linda's question echoed around the table. 3 years wasn't something that just happens. 3 years was planning. It was choice. It was a conscious decision to hurt someone repeatedly. Tyler stood up, clearly irritated by the guests' reactions. Megan could see that he expected more understanding, maybe even support. Look, I know you're upset, but we're not children here. Sometimes people fall in love. Sometimes marriages end. It happens. Not like this, Rebecca said, her voice trembling with emotion. Not on a wedding anniversary, in front of everyone, not with her best friend. Rebecca had tears in her eyes. Megan had always had a special affection for her sister-in-law, and seeing her genuine pain was almost worse than the betrayal itself. Megan continued sitting in silence, watching the scene unfold. It was fascinating to see how Tyler was trying to normalize the situation, as if betraying his wife with her best friend was something natural and acceptable. As if 15 years of marriage could be discarded with a simple, "These things happen." "And you, Megan?" Tyler's mother asked, turning to her with tear-filled eyes. "What do you have to say about this?" All the people at the table looked at Megan. She could feel the weight of expectations. They expected her to cry, scream, make a dramatic scene. That's what any normal person would do. That's what Tyler probably wanted, for her to play the role of the hysterical victim so he could feel justified. Megan looked at Tyler, then at Nicole, then at all the expectant faces around the table, some with pity, others with anger, all waiting for her reaction. Do you want to know what I have to say?" she asked calmly, her voice cutting through the tense air like a blade. Tyler seemed relieved. He probably thought she was going to accept everything gracefully, make things easier for him, maybe even thank him for being honest. "Yes," he said. "I think we would all benefit if you expressed your feelings." Megan almost laughed at the irony. Tyler asking her to express her feelings after humiliating her publicly, after 3 years of lies, after turning their wedding anniversary into a spectacle of humiliation. She touched the strap of her purse once more. The documents were there, waiting. But it still wasn't the right moment. Tyler and Nicole had just completely exposed themselves in front of everyone. Now they were vulnerable, confident that they had control of the situation. "I have a lot to say," Megan replied, her voice still surprisingly calm. "But first, I'd like to know more details. 3 years is a long time. How did you manage to keep this hidden for so long?" Tyler and Nicole exchanged another look. They weren't expecting questions. They were expecting tears. They expected drama, not calm curiosity. Megan," Tyler said, looking a little uncomfortable. "I don't think the details are important now." "Oh, but I think they are," Megan replied, and for the first time that night, she smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. After all, if we're going to be honest, as you said, let's be completely honest. Tyler seemed irritated by Megan's insistence on knowing details. He crossed his arms and sighed, as if she were being unnecessarily difficult. "Megan, I think we're all tired from this evening. Maybe it would be better if we talked about this at home." "No," Megan replied firmly. "If you chose to do this here, in front of everyone, then we're going to finish the conversation right here." Nicole nervously fidgeted with her wine glass, avoiding looking directly at anyone at the table. The other guests remained silent, as if they were watching a drama film and didn't know whether they should continue watching. "All right," Tyler said, clearly annoyed. "What do you want to know?" Megan leaned slightly forward, her relaxed posture contrasting with everyone else's tension. "Where did you meet? How did you organize your meetings? I imagine it wasn't easy to hide this for 3 years." Tyler and Nicole exchanged another uncomfortable look. It was obvious they hadn't expected to have to explain the sordid details of the affair in front of friends and family. "Does this really matter?" Nicole asked, speaking for the first time since confirming the relationship. "To me, yes," Megan replied calmly. "After all, I was the only person at this table who didn't know what was happening, right? Did all of you know?" The question provoked another wave of discomfort. Mark and Linda quickly shook their heads, indicating they didn't know. James and Carol did the same. Tyler's parents seemed genuinely too shocked to have known previously. "No," Rebecca said firmly. "Nobody here knew, Megan. At least I hope not." Tyler ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Megan knew well. He always did that when he was nervous or feeling pressured. Look, we would meet sometimes for lunch. We talked a lot. Things evolved naturally. Naturally? Megan repeated, as if she were testing the taste of the word. 3 years of natural evolution. And when exactly did you decide it was love? Nicole finally raised her eyes and looked directly at Megan. For a moment, it seemed like she was going to say something sincere, maybe even apologize, but then her expression hardened. Megan, I know this is painful for you, but sometimes people simply connect in a way that— That what? Megan interrupted, her voice still calm, but with a hint of something that could be irritation. That justifies lying to your best friend for 3 years? That justifies sitting in my living room, drinking my coffee, giving me advice about my marriage, knowing you were sleeping with my husband. The silence that followed was heavy. Nicole lowered her eyes again, and Tyler seemed increasingly agitated. Megan, Tyler said, I understand that you're hurt, but— Hurt? Megan interrupted, and for the first time that night, she laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh that made everyone at the table shiver. Tyler, do you think I'm just hurt? She slowly stood up from her chair, and all eyes followed her. Megan walked a few steps away from the table, as if she needed space to think. You know what's interesting? She said, turning to face Tyler and Nicole. You talk about honesty, about how things evolved naturally, about how sometimes people fall in love. Tyler nodded, seeming hopeful that she was finally understanding their point of view. But you forgot something important, Megan continued. You forgot that I'm not stupid. The statement echoed through the room. Nicole quickly raised her eyes, an expression of alarm crossing her face. What do you mean by that? Tyler asked. And for the first time that night, Megan detected a note of real concern in his voice. Megan smiled again, but this time the smile was different. It was the smile of someone who was about to completely turn the tables. I mean, Tyler, that I've known about you two for 6 months. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Tyler went pale. Nicole dropped her wine glass, which shattered on the floor, spreading red liquid like blood across the tiles. The other guests seemed to have stopped breathing. What are you saying? Tyler managed to murmur. I'm saying I hired a private detective in March. I'm saying I have photos of you going in and out of hotels. I'm saying I know about the romantic lunches, about the messages you exchange, about everything. Nicole brought her hand to her mouth, as if she were going to vomit. Tyler stood up abruptly, knocking over his own chair. You knew, he stammered. I knew, Megan confirmed calmly. And I pretended I didn't know. For 6 whole months. Tyler's mother whispered something that sounded like a prayer. Rebecca looked at Megan with a mixture of admiration and horror. Why? Nicole asked, her voice almost inaudible. Megan looked at her former best friend, the person she had known since college, who was her maid of honor, whom she considered a sister. Because I wanted to be sure, because I wanted to understand exactly what you were doing, and because I wanted you to hang yourselves with your own rope. Tyler began pacing back and forth, clearly in panic. Megan, if you knew, why didn't you say anything? Why did you organize tonight? Why? Why what, Tyler? Why didn't I make things easier for you? Why didn't I simply accept being betrayed and humiliated in silence? Megan returned to her chair and sat down, as if she were the calmest person in the world. Do you want to know why I pretended I didn't know? Because I wanted to see how far you would go. I wanted to see if you would have the courage to tell me the truth or if you would continue lying forever. Tyler stopped walking and looked at her with an expression that mixed anger and fear. And now? What are you going to do? Megan touched the strap of her purse, where the documents waited patiently. Now, Tyler, you're going to discover that underestimating an intelligent woman was the biggest mistake of your lives. The table remained in absolute silence. Everyone knew that night was far from over, and that Megan had many more surprises in store. And you? Have you ever been in a situation where you discovered someone was lying to you, but decided not to confront them immediately? Sometimes Waiting and observing can give us much more valuable information than acting on impulse. What would you do in a situation like this? The silence at the table was so dense it seemed possible to cut it with a knife. Tyler was still standing, clearly shaken by the revelation that Megan had known everything for months. Nicole remained motionless, staring fixedly at the shards of the broken glass on the floor, as if she could reassemble her shattered life just by concentrating on the glass fragments. Megan, on the other hand, seemed to have found an almost supernatural calm. She absent-mindedly played with her napkin, observing Tyler and Nicole's reactions with the curiosity of a scientist studying specimens in a laboratory. "You know," she said casually, breaking the silence, "it was very interesting to observe you two these past few months." Tyler sat down slowly, as if his legs could no longer support him. "Megan, Shh," she interrupted him gently, raising her hand. "Now it's my turn to speak. You've had 3 years to tell your stories. I deserve at least a few minutes." The other guests remained motionless, as if they were watching a theatrical performance and feared that any movement might break the fourth wall. "For example," Megan continued, "it was fascinating to see how you developed a nonverbal communication system. Tyler, you always ran your hand through your hair when Nicole entered the room. And Nicole, you always touched your necklace when you wanted to get his attention. Nicole instinctively brought her hand to her neck, then quickly lowered it when she realized what she had done. Or that time in April," Megan continued, "when you said you were going to work late, Tyler, but you actually went to dinner at that Italian restaurant downtown. The waiter even commented on how you looked like a couple in love." Tyler's face lost even more color. "How did you know that?" Megan completed the question. "Oh, Tyler, do you really think a private detective only works by taking photos from afar? He talked to people, hotel employees, waiters, receptionists. You'd be surprised how many details people notice when they think they're seeing a romance." Nicole finally found her voice. "Megan, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Megan asked, tilting her head slightly. "How you managed to look me in the eyes on my birthday in May and wish me happiness in my marriage. How you managed to advise me about relationships while sleeping with my husband." The irony in Megan's voice was palpable, but her expression remained strangely serene. "Or maybe you want to explain that conversation we had in June," she continued, "when you said I should trust Tyler more, that I was being too paranoid. I remember you said, verbatim, 'Megan, you have a solid marriage. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any.'" Nicole closed her eyes, as if Megan's words were physical slaps. "Oh, and Tyler." Megan turned to her husband. "That day in July when you came home with flowers, saying it was just because you wanted to surprise me. You had actually just left a date with Nicole and were feeling guilty, weren't you?" Tyler opened and closed his mouth several times, like a fish out of water. "The flowers," he murmured. "Exactly. White roses. Funny how you had never bought white roses before. But Nicole always loved white roses, didn't she? She even posted a photo of them on Instagram a few weeks before." Megan picked up her phone and swiped her finger across the screen, as if looking for something. "Actually, I have a very interesting timeline here. Want to see?" Tyler and Nicole exchanged a look of panic. They clearly didn't know how much Megan had discovered, and this was leaving them completely destabilized. "March 15th, Megan read from the phone. "Dinner at La Palazzo. You asked for the corner table, away from the windows. Tyler, you paid cash, but forgot that the parking lot only accepts cards. So there's a record of your credit card at the same time Nicole was there." Tyler swallowed hard. "March 22nd, Downtown Marriott Hotel. Room registered under Tyler's name, but Nicole was seen entering through the side entrance at 3 in the afternoon." "Megan, stop," Nicole pleaded. "Why should I stop? You didn't stop. April 5th, April 12th, April 19th. You developed an interesting routine. Always on Thursdays. Always the same hotel. Always the same time." Megan closed the phone and looked at both of them with an expression that mixed amusement and disdain. "You know what was the most interesting part about watching you? It was realizing how careless you became. In the beginning, you were careful, discreet, but after a few months, you started feeling safe. You started thinking you were smarter than me." Rebecca, who had remained silent since sitting down again, finally spoke. "Megan, how did you manage to endure all this? How did you manage to pretend you didn't know?" Megan looked at her sister-in-law with an expression that could almost be tender. "Rebecca, have you ever watched a car accident happening in slow motion? It's horrible, but you can't look away. That's how I felt. I wanted to see how far they would go. I wanted to see if there would be any moment when either of their consciences would speak louder." She turned again to Tyler and Nicole. But there wasn't, was there? There wasn't even a moment of hesitation. Not a moment where either of you thought, "Maybe this is wrong. Maybe we should tell Megan the truth." Tyler tried to speak, but Megan raised her hand again. "Actually, there were moments where you had the perfect opportunity to be honest. Like when I asked directly if there was something wrong with our marriage, Tyler, or when I said I felt you were distant, Nicole, and asked if there was something you wanted to tell me." The memories of missed opportunities seemed to weigh on Tyler and Nicole like stones. "But you chose to lie," Megan continued, "repeatedly, systematically, for 3 years." She paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "And you know what's most interesting? You didn't just lie about the affair. You lied about everything. Where you were, who you were with, what you were doing. You built an entire parallel reality of lies." Tyler finally found his voice, though it came out hoarse and trembling. "Megan, if you knew everything, why didn't you say anything before? Why did you let it get to this point?" Megan smiled, and for the first time that night, the smile had a hint of something that could be cruelty. "Because I wanted you to feel safe. I wanted you to become confident. I wanted you to reach the point where you would feel comfortable humiliating me publicly." She looked around the table, at all the shocked faces of the guests. "And it worked perfectly, don't you think?" Tyler and Nicole seemed to have shrunk in their chairs. They were clearly beginning to realize that Megan wasn't just a betrayed wife seeking closure. She had planned this. And if she had planned up to this point, what else had she planned? The unspoken question hung in the air like a silent threat, and Megan seemed to be enjoying herself immensely by letting them imagine the possibilities. Tyler couldn't stay still. He stood up again and began pacing back and forth behind his chair like a caged animal. His hands trembled slightly as he repeatedly ran his fingers through his hair. "Megan," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "what exactly do you want? What are you trying to achieve with all this?" Megan watched him with the patience of someone watching a movie they already know the ending to. She crossed her legs and leaned back in her chair as if she were completely at ease. "I want the complete truth, Tyler. All of it." "I already told you the truth," he replied quickly, but his voice went up an octave. "I told you about Nicole. I told you I want a divorce. What else do you want to know?" Megan tilted her head to the side, as if she were considering the question. Well, for starters, you could tell me about the others." The effect was instantaneous. Tyler stopped walking abruptly. Nicole raised her head so quickly she almost hurt her neck. The other guests, who had started to get used to the rhythm of revelations, became completely alert again. "Ma, what others?" Tyler asked, but his voice came out strangled. Megan smiled, and this time the smile was genuinely amused. "Oh, Tyler, did you really think Nicole was the first, or the only one?" The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. This wasn't just shock, it was horror. Nicole looked at Tyler with an expression of absolute betrayal. "What is she talking about?" Nicole asked, her voice almost a whisper. Tyler opened and closed his mouth several times, clearly panicking. I don't know what she's talking about. Megan, you're making things up now." "Am I?" Megan asked, taking out her phone again. "Because I have some interesting information here about someone named Amanda from your office, and also about Rachel, that consultant you hired last year." Nicole went pale. "Tyler, tell me she's lying." Tyler looked desperately between Megan and Nicole, as if trying to calculate which lie would be less harmful. Nicole, I can explain. Explain what? Nicole exploded, standing up so violently she almost knocked over the table. Explain that you were cheating on me while cheating on your wife. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone at the table. Nicole was furious about discovering Tyler was cheating on her, while she herself was cheating on her best friend. Nicole, calm down, Tyler tried, extending his hand toward her. Don't touch me, she screamed, backing away from him as if he were poisonous. Megan watched the scene with genuine fascination. It was like watching two snakes attacking each other. You know, Nicole, Megan said casually. It's interesting to see your reaction. You're so upset about discovering Tyler cheated on you. How do you think I felt? Nicole turned to Megan, tears of anger streaming down her face. This is different. Is it? Megan asked, tilting her head. How exactly? Nicole opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. She clearly realized the logical trap she had fallen into. Tyler, seeing Nicole completely destabilized, tried to regain control of the situation. Megan, enough. You're playing with us like a cat plays with a mouse. What do you want? Money? The house? Just tell me what you want, so we can end this. Megan laughed, a low and genuine laugh that made everyone at the table shiver. Tyler, you really don't understand, do you? This isn't about what I want. This is about what you did. We already admitted what we did, Tyler said, his voice getting higher due to desperation. We told you about our affair. What else do you want? I want, Megan said slowly, you to understand exactly what you did. Not just to me, but to everyone here. She gestured to the other guests, who seemed to have forgotten to breathe. You turned 15 years of marriage into a lie. You made everyone here believe in something that didn't exist. You made me question my own sanity. Tyler tried to interrupt her, but Megan continued, her voice gaining strength. But do you know how many times I wondered if I was becoming paranoid? How many times I blamed myself for not trusting enough? How many nights I stayed awake wondering what I was doing wrong? Nicole had stopped crying and now stared fixedly at Megan as if she was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what they had done. And the cruelest part, Megan continued, is that you made me participate in my own humiliation. Nicole, you made me tell you about my marriage problems while you were the one causing those problems. The room was completely silent, except for Tyler's heavy breathing. So no, Megan concluded, this isn't about what I want. This is about justice. Tyler ran his hands over his face, clearly desperate. All right, we messed up. We messed up bad, but what do you want us to do now? We can't go back in time. Megan observed him for a long moment, as if she were considering the question. You're right, Tyler. You can't go back in time. But I can show you exactly what I discovered about your activities. Tyler swallowed hard. What do you mean? I mean, Megan said, touching the strap of her purse, that you haven't seen anything yet. Nicole, who had sat down again, looked at Megan's purse with an expression of growing terror. Aunt Megan, what do you have in that purse? Megan smiled enigmatically, but didn't answer. Instead, she looked around the table, making eye contact with each person present. You know, she said conversationally, it's funny how truth has a way of coming to light. No matter how many lies you build on top of it, no matter how many years you spend hiding, the truth always finds a way. Tyler was visibly sweating now. Megan, stop speaking in riddles. If you have something to say, just say it. Oh, I will, Megan replied calmly. When the time is right. The tension at the table had become almost physical. It was as if the air was charged with electricity before a storm. Everyone knew something big was about to happen, but no one knew exactly what. Tyler tried one last time to take control. Megan, I demand that you stop these games and tell us exactly what you discovered. Megan stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. Tyler, you're not in a position to demand anything, but if you really want to know, she made a dramatic pause, you'll find out very soon. And you, have you ever been in a situation where you knew more about someone than that person imagined? It's a strange feeling of power, isn't it? Sometimes, The information we have can completely change the course of a situation. How would you handle it if you were in Megan's place? Megan observed Tyler for a few more seconds, savoring the moment. She could see the desperation growing in his eyes, the way his hands trembled as he waited for what was coming. Nicole remained motionless in her chair, as if any movement could accelerate the inevitable. "All right," Megan said finally, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Since you insist." She opened her purse calmly, as if she were looking for a mint. Everyone at the table leaned imperceptibly forward, like plants seeking the sun. "Tyler, do you remember when you told me I didn't need to worry about every penny of the company? When you told me to trust you?" Tyler swallowed hard, but didn't respond. Megan pulled out a black folder from her purse and placed it on the table with a dull sound that echoed through the silent room. "Then see this," she said, her words echoing exactly the thumbnail text. Tyler looked at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. Nicole brought her hand to her throat, as if she were suffocating. "What is this?" Tyler asked, though his voice betrayed that he already suspected the answer. Instead of answering, Megan opened the folder methodically. The sound of paper being handled was the only noise in the room, amplified by the absolute silence of the guests. "These," she said, removing a pile of organized documents, "are bank statements from our business account." Tyler went pale. "And these," she continued, placing a second pile next to the first, "are the receipts of transfers you made." "Transfers I never authorized." Nicole began shaking her head slowly, as if she could deny the reality of what she was seeing. 20,000 in January. Megan read calmly, as if reciting a shopping list. 15,000 in February. 30,000 in March. With each amount mentioned, Tyler seemed to shrink further into his chair. "In total," Megan said, turning a page, $240,000. Transferred from our company to your personal accounts that I didn't even know existed." A shocked murmur went around the table. James whispered something to Carol that sounded like, "My God." Rebecca covered her mouth with her hands. "But the most interesting part," Megan continued, her voice gaining a hint of dark amusement, "isn't just the money you stole, it's where that money went." She pulled out another section of documents from the folder. Luxury hotels, expensive dinners, jewelry. Megan looked directly at Nicole. "That necklace you were wearing last week, $2,500, bought with money from my company." Nicole instinctively touched her neck, as if the necklace were burning her skin. "The diamond earrings you wore on my birthday in May, $4,000. Megan flipped through more pages. "The romantic weekend you spent at that resort last month, $8,000 for 3 days. Tyler tried to stand up, but his legs seemed to have lost all strength. "Megan, I can explain." "Explain?" Megan laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Tyler, you financed your affair with money from my company. You used the resources I built to betray me." She pulled out more documents from the folder. "But wait, there's more." Tyler groaned audibly. "These are the corporate credit card bills. You remember, the one that was supposedly only for business emergencies?" Megan spread several papers across the table. Expensive lingerie, Victoria's Secret, La Perla, French perfumes, champagne, all bought with the company card, all for Nicole. Tyler's parents seemed to have stopped breathing. His mother had silent tears streaming down her face. "And here," Megan said, pulling out a new section, "we have restaurant receipts. Always the same places. Always at lunchtime, always 2 people." She picked up a specific receipt. La Palazzo, March 15th, table for 2, Dom Perignon champagne, lobster, $230. Megan looked at Tyler. "Do you remember that lunch? It was the day after I asked you if we had enough money to replace the air conditioning at home." Tyler had bent over the table, his head in his hands. "Megan, stop. Please." "Stop," Megan repeated. "Tyler, I haven't even gotten to the best part yet." She pulled out more documents from the folder, which seemed to have an inexhaustible source of evidence. These are the receipts of transfers you thought I wouldn't discover. Offshore accounts, investments in third parties, names. Megan smiled coldly. Did you really think I wouldn't notice $50,000 disappearing from our main account? Nicole finally found her voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. Megan, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know where the money came from. Megan turned to her former best friend with an expression of pure disdain. Didn't know? Nicole? Did you think an office worker could afford $1,000 a night hotels? Did you think he had a secret fund of expensive jewelry? Nicole couldn't respond. But here's the part you'll find most interesting, Megan said, pulling out the last section of documents from the folder. These are the papers that prove I transferred all our assets to accounts exclusively in my name. The effect was like a bomb exploding. Tyler raised his head so quickly he almost fell from his chair. Ju, what? The house, the accounts, the investments, the company shares. Everything is now legally only in my name. Megan spread the documents on the table like playing cards. While you were busy spending my money and planning how to divide my assets in the divorce, I was busy protecting everything I built. Tyler stood up staggering, clearly in shock. This isn't legal. You can't do this. I can, and I did, Megan replied calmly. Everything completely legal. I consulted 3 different lawyers to make sure. She pulled out more papers from the folder. And these are the documents that prove you violated our business partnership agreements by using corporate funds for personal use without authorization. Tyler was visibly trembling now. And these, Megan continued relentlessly, are copies of all the emails you exchanged using company computers. You knew I had access to the corporate server, right? Nicole made a sound that could have been a sob or a muffled scream. 523 emails over 2 years, some quite explicit. Megan closed the folder with a final and definitive sound. So now you know exactly what I discovered. Not just that you were having an affair, but that Tyler was systematically stealing money from my company to finance this relationship. She looked around the table at all the shocked faces of the guests. And now you know what I did about it. Tyler and Nicole remained in absolute silence, clearly trying to process the magnitude of the situation. They weren't just exposed adulterers. Tyler was a thief, and both were completely ruined. Megan leaned back in her chair, finally relaxing for the first time that night. Now, she said calmly, does anyone still want dessert? The silence that followed the question about dessert was absolute. It was as if Megan had thrown a grenade in the middle of the table, and everyone was waiting for the final explosion. Tyler stared fixedly at the scattered documents, as if he could make them disappear just by the force of his will. Finally, reality began to set in. I lost everything, Tyler murmured, his voice almost inaudible. Not everything, Megan replied with frightening calm. You still have the clothes you're wearing, for now. Tyler tried to stand up, but his legs trembled and he had to lean on the table. Megan, you can't do this. We've been married for 15 years. Half of everything is mine by right. Megan laughed, a low and cold sound. Tyler, you just discovered that you have no right to anything when you use marital funds for betrayal and systematic theft. My lawyers were very clear about that. Nicole, who had remained paralyzed since the document revelation, finally found her voice. Megan, what does this mean for me? Megan turned to her former best friend with an expression that could cut glass. For you, Nicole? Well, that depends. Do you still work at Morrison & Associates? Nicole nodded weakly. What a coincidence, Megan said, taking her phone out of her purse, because I have John Morrison's personal number right here. The blood disappeared from Nicole's face. Megan, no. No what? Shouldn't I tell your boss that you've been using company equipment to exchange romantic emails? That you missed work for clandestine meetings? That you accepted expensive gifts bought with stolen money? Nicole began to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. Megan, please, I need this job. You should have thought about that before, Megan replied, dialing a number. Hello, John. This is Megan. Sorry to bother you so late, but I need to talk to you about Nicole. Nicole stood up abruptly, almost knocking over her chair. No, please. But Megan continued speaking calmly on the phone. Yes, my former best friend. It turns out I discovered some things about her activities during work hours that you should know. Tyler tried to intervene. Megan, stop this. Megan raised her hand, silencing him, while continuing the phone conversation. Personal emails during work hours? Oh, no, John, it's much worse than that. How about an extramarital affair with my husband using company resources? Even from a distance, everyone could hear John Morrison's voice on the other end of the line, clearly shocked. Yes, I have complete documentation. I can email everything tonight. Nicole had bent over the table, sobbing uncontrollably. Thank you, John. I knew you would understand the gravity of the situation. Talk to you later. Megan hung up the phone and looked at Nicole with satisfaction. There. That solves your employment situation. You made me lose my job, Nicole managed to say between sobs. I didn't make you lose anything, Megan corrected. You lost your job the moment you decided to betray your best friend and use corporate resources to facilitate that betrayal. Tyler was running his hands over his face, clearly trying to process the magnitude of the situation. Megan, listen. I know I'm wrong. I know I messed everything up. But you can't leave me with nothing. How am I going to live? Megan observed him for a long moment, as if considering the question. Tyler, do you know how I started my company? I had $300 and a used laptop. I worked 18 hours a day for 2 years to build what we have today. Tyler nodded, not knowing where she was going with this. So I suggest you do the same thing. Start from scratch. Get a job. Build your own life. But I have nowhere to live, Tyler protested. Oh, that, Megan said, as if she had forgotten a minor detail. Yes, you'll need to move out by Sunday. Sunday? That's only 2 days. It's enough time to pack, Megan replied. Oh, and Tyler, take only your clothes and personal items. Everything else stays. Rebecca, who had watched everything in shocked silence, finally spoke. Megan, I understand you're hurt, but isn't this a bit extreme? Megan turned to her sister-in-law, her expression softening slightly. Rebecca, your brother stole almost $250,000 from me. He used that money to finance an affair that lasted 3 years. Do you think I should be more generous? Rebecca looked at Tyler, then at Megan, clearly torn between family loyalty and the obvious justice of the situation. When you put it that way. Mom, Tyler turned to his mother, clearly desperate. Say something. She can't do this. Tyler's mother looked at her son with an expression that mixed love and deep disappointment. Tyler, dear, what you did was terrible. Not just to Megan, but to all of us. You made us participate in this terrible day today. Tyler seemed more shocked by his mother's reaction than by anything else that had happened that night. But I'm your son, and I love you, she replied, tears in her eyes. But that doesn't mean I approve of what you did. Nicole, who had stopped crying, looked around the table with an expression of complete despair. And now? What are we going to do now? Megan studied her for a moment. Nicole, I suggest you start looking for a new job, and maybe a new social circle, because I doubt anyone here wants to keep in touch with you after tonight. A murmur of agreement went around the table. It was clear that the couple's friends had definitively chosen sides. But Megan, Nicole tried one last time. We were best friends. That has to count for something. Megan slowly stood up, collecting the documents and putting them back in the folder. Nicole, you destroyed our friendship the moment you decided to sleep with my husband. You buried it when you decided to lie to me for 3 years, and you burned it when you accepted gifts bought with money stolen from me. She closed the folder with a final sound. There's nothing left to count. Tyler made one last desperate attempt. Megan, if you do this, if you leave me with nothing, I'm going to fight you in court. I'm going to make your life hell. Megan stared at him directly, and for the first time that night, Tyler saw something genuinely dangerous in her eyes. Tyler, I have documentation of 2 years of systematic theft. I have evidence that you violated corporate agreements. I have proof that you used marital property to facilitate adultery." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Do you really want this to go to court? Because I would love for this to become public." Tyler finally seemed to understand that he was completely defeated. There was no way out, no recourse, no argument that could save him. Nicole and Tyler were ruined, financially, socially, professionally, and the worst part was that they knew they deserved every consequence. Megan had executed the perfect revenge, and now everyone at the table could see exactly what happens when you underestimate an intelligent and determined woman. And you, what would you do if you discovered that someone not only betrayed you emotionally, but also stole from you financially? Sometimes betrayal goes far beyond the heart. It attacks our security, our future. How would you handle a discovery like that? 1 year later, Megan was sitting in her new office, looking through the panoramic window that overlooked downtown. The space was 3 times larger than the previous one, with modern furniture and a team that had doubled in size over the past 12 months. Her assistant, Jennifer, knocked on the door and entered with a smile. "Megan, the quarterly report arrived. The numbers are impressive again." Megan took the papers and smiled when she saw the figures. Her consulting company had grown 40% since the divorce. It was as if getting rid of the dead weight that Tyler represented had released an energy she didn't even know she possessed. "Thank you, Jennifer. And don't forget, you're leaving early today. It's your son's birthday." "Are you sure?" "There's the meeting with the Seattle clients." "I'll handle it," Megan said. Family comes first. It was a philosophy she had completely adopted over the past year. Work was important, but personal life was sacred. Her phone rang, and she saw Rebecca's name on the screen. "Hi, Rebecca." "Hi, Megan. How are you?" "Very well. And you?" "I'm fine. Listen, I know this might be strange, but I wanted to tell you something." Megan leaned back in her chair. Over the past few months, she and Rebecca had maintained sporadic contact. Her sister-in-law had always been a good person, and Megan saw no reason to punish Rebecca for her brother's mistakes. "Go ahead." "It's about Tyler." Megan paused. She rarely thought about her ex-husband nowadays, and when she did, she didn't feel anger. It was more like remembering a bad movie she had watched once. "What about him?" "He's working as a salesman at a used car dealership. He lives in a small apartment on the other side of town. And, well, he asked if I thought you would agree to talk to him." Megan laughed softly. "Rebecca, Tyler can talk to me through my lawyers if he needs anything legal. Other than that, we have nothing to discuss." "I figured you'd say that, but I had to ask." "And Nicole, did you hear anything about her?" Rebecca sighed. She moved to another state. From what I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a small company. "I think she wanted to start over away from everything." "That makes sense," Megan said. After she hung up, Megan reflected on how strange it was to receive this news and feel nothing but indifference. There was no satisfaction in knowing they were struggling, no pity. It was simply irrelevant to her current life. Her phone rang again, this time showing a name that made her smile immediately. "Hi, Daniel." "Hi, beautiful. How was your day?" Daniel Mitchell had entered Megan's life 6 months ago when she hired his law firm to expand her business. He was intelligent, funny, honest, and most importantly, he treated her as a life partner in all aspects. It was good. "Are you still coming to dinner at my place tonight?" "Of course. I'm bringing that wine you liked." "Perfect. I'm going to make that salmon. Can't wait. I love you. I love you too." The words came out naturally, without the forced weight they had in recent years with Tyler. With Daniel, everything was simple, honest, real. Megan finished work and drove home. The house was new too, a decision she made 3 months after the divorce. It was smaller than the previous one, but it was completely hers. Every piece of furniture, every color, every detail reflected her tastes without compromise. While preparing dinner, she thought about how her life had changed, not just externally, but internally. She was more confident, more decisive, more aware of her own worth. The divorce had been finalized quickly. With all the evidence Megan presented, Tyler had no choice but to accept the terms she offered, which were basically nothing beyond his clothes and a small amount so he could establish himself elsewhere. Nicole never tried to make contact. Megan had changed her number and blocked her on all social media. It was as if Nicole had never existed. Daniel arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. As always, he was punctual, reliable, predictable in the best possible ways. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing him at the entrance. "Long, but productive. And yours?" While they had dinner, they talked about work, about weekend plans, about the book Megan was reading. They were simple, everyday conversations, but they had a quality that her conversations with Tyler never had. They were genuine. "You seem thoughtful today," Daniel observed. Rebecca called. "She told me about Tyler." Daniel paused with his fork in the air. "How do you feel about that?" It was one of the things Megan loved most about Daniel. He never assumed he knew how she felt. He always asked, honestly, nothing. "I don't feel anything. Is that good or bad?" Megan considered the question. "It's good. It means I really got over it. That part of my life stayed in the past where it belongs." Daniel smiled. "I'm happy to hear that." After dinner, they sat on the couch, and Megan snuggled against Daniel's chest. It was a simple gesture, but it represented something she hadn't had in years. Peace. "Daniel," she said. "Yes, thank you." "For what?" "For showing me how it should be." "How what should be?" "True love." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me love you." Megan closed her eyes and smiled. A year ago, she was sitting at a restaurant table discovering that her life was a lie. Today, she was in her own home, in the arms of a man who genuinely loved her, with a thriving company and a bright future ahead. Tyler and Nicole's betrayal had been devastating at the time, but looking back, Megan could see that it had been the best gift they could have given her. They forced her to take control of her own life, to become stronger, to discover what she was really capable of. She had spent 15 years being half of a dysfunctional couple. Now she was a complete woman, powerful, loved, and respected. Tyler had thought he was getting rid of her to be with Nicole. In reality, he had freed Megan to become the best version of herself. And that, Megan thought smiling, was the sweetest revenge of all. Not just surviving what they did, but thriving beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. Sometimes, life's greatest betrayals become the greatest gifts, because they force us to discover our own strength. And Megan had discovered that her strength was much greater than anything she herself had ever imagined. And so ends the story of Megan, a woman who transformed the greatest betrayal of her life into the greatest victory. She discovered that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who give us the most valuable gifts, even if in a cruel way. Tyler and Nicole's gift was forcing Megan to discover her own strength. The moral of this story is powerful. Never underestimate the power of a determined woman. When someone tries to destroy you, you have two choices. Let it happen, or use that energy to rebuild yourself even stronger. Megan teaches us that revenge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about rebuilding yourself so brilliantly that your happiness becomes proof of how much they lost. It's about transforming pain into power, betrayal into wisdom, ending into beginning. Think about your own life. What difficult situations have you faced that could be transformed into strength? What betrayals have you experienced that actually freed you for something better? Sometimes, the worst things that happen to us are disguises for the best opportunities. If you're going through something similar, remember, you are stronger than you imagine. You have inner resources you don't even know about yet. And sometimes, the end of something bad is the beginning of something extraordinary. Now tell me in the comments, what lesson from this story touched you the most? Have you ever been in a situation where you discovered strength you didn't know you had? Your story could inspire someone who is going through difficult times right now. If this story moved you, leave your like on this video so more people can discover it. Subscribe to our channel because we have many other incredible stories of overcoming and strength waiting for you. and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming exciting stories.